You know, when you go through a phase where you just feel a bit anxious all the time, and it's not an intense panic kind of anxiety, just a continuous underlying feeling of anxiety. For me, I would describe it as that feeling when you would have to give a presentation in front of class, that kind of nervousness, just that you're not actually having to give any presentation at all. Sometimes I will go through phases where I feel this kind of lingering anxiety for what feels like no reason at all, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So today, let's talk about that. I wanted to share some things that really help me whenever I'm feeling exactly that feeling. As always, if you enjoy my content, feel free to support it in some way, such as liking, commenting, or subscribing. Your support really helps for me to continue to create these episodes. The last time I remember I was struggling with this kind of an anxiety, I was having a conversation with my friend about it. And at that point, I was just on this rampage expressing how annoyed I was at myself. Basically, I was saying all these things like, my body is just so stupid for acting this way. Like, this is making things so much harder than they need to be. Can my body just go back to being normal so that I can continue my life in a normal way? Like, why is this happening? What's wrong with me? This is just so unnecessary. That was kind of where I was at. I was really judging this part of myself that was feeling whatever I was feeling. I remember my friend was just kind of quiet and listening to me. And then at some point she said, wow, I wouldn't want to be your body right now. And I was like, say what? She said, yeah, basically all your body is trying to do is talk to you. It's trying to express that something is going on, and all you're doing is being a real bitch towards it. And I was like, wow, okay. But now looking back, I mean, she was totally right. If there's one thing I've realized with all of this, it's that our body doesn't lie. Like, your body truly does not lie. And so any experience of anxiety is always an indicator that something is going on or something is out of balance, even if our rational mind cannot see that or doesn't want to see that in that moment. And so judging ourselves for whatever experience we are having in that moment and for the reaction that our body is having really doesn't make any sense, and truly also doesn't help the situation at all. On the contrary, it will just make it so much worse. It's not always easy to move out of this kind of self-judgment, especially if our body is reacting in a way that we don't understand, or maybe is making our lives harder than they need to be and is really affecting us. But something that really helps me with that is to ask myself, would I talk to a friend in the way that I'm talking to myself, or really in the way that I'm talking to my anxiety in a way? And mostly the answer would be no, I would never do that. Imagine a friend would come to you and say, I'm feeling a bit anxious all the time and I'm really unsure why, but it's been really hard for me. You would never say, well, no, I think you don't have a right to feel this because we don't have time for this. And also, there is so much you can be grateful for. And also, you're just pissing me off. I can't wait for you to finally leave. Like, you would never say that. So then the question is, what would happen if we would start to show up for that part of us that is experiencing this anxiety with the same compassion and love and patience and understanding that we would show up for a friend? Like, you would probably validate that friend's experience. You would take them seriously, even if you don't understand them fully. And I think that's really the first most important step, to not judge ourselves for our experience just because we don't understand it or don't know how to change it just yet. There are obviously so many different levels to anxiety. It can get really bad for some people, and I've experienced really bad levels of it as well. But for me personally, I find this subtle but continuous feeling of anxiety very difficult to navigate also, because it's not loud enough for other people to realize it, or for yourself to really be like, okay, this is really bad, I need to do something. It's not that obvious, but I think it can really still affect your life and how you feel about yourself, especially if you are experiencing it over longer periods of time. And so something that I often find myself doing when I'm feeling that is that I try to distract myself as much as I can. I will try to stay busy all the time. And if I don't manage that, I will start to overconsume media and scroll on my phone a lot and just watch things all the time to fill those spaces. And then I also start to overthink about situations more, just anything to distract myself from whatever my body is experiencing, even if in that moment I'm not aware that that's what I'm doing. But I've also realized that is probably the worst thing you can do in that situation. I kind of think of it like this. When you are struggling with this kind of anxiety, at that moment, you have two paths that you can walk. One is to continue to distract yourself all the time from the feeling. And that path looks really nice and fun in the beginning, which is why we go on it, because you're not really feeling what's going on. But then not long after, you fall into this black hole, and then it just progressively all gets worse. Or the second path is to actively try and look at what's going on and listen to whatever your body is trying to tell you. And that path looks really uncomfortable and difficult at first because now you're not distracting yourself from reality, you need to face it. But once you go through that uncomfortable part, you create the opportunity for everything to just progressively get better and easier. Something that really helps me not go down this path where I just completely do things to disconnect from myself entirely is to find healthy distractions that work for me. I think often we go about it in a very black and white way and we say, okay, I have been doing too many things to distract myself, so now I need to stop all of it. I need to get rid of everything and just sit with myself in my room alone until I find the answers. And if I don't manage that, I might as well just give up. But I think that's just not a very motivating and also not realistic way to go about it, because anxiety can be really difficult to sit with. And so that's not always possible for everyone. But if you create healthy distractions for yourself, that's a much easier but still effective way to not completely disconnect from your body and what you're feeling, whilst also not completely overwhelming yourself with whatever you're feeling. So for example, some things that fall into the category of healthy distractions for me are things like exercise, like anything where I need to be present in that moment, but still use my body in a way. So for example, playing a sport or dancing, hiking, swimming, anything like that, or even creativity and art, like making things, creating things, painting, making anything. I recently did a pottery class, which I really enjoyed, things like that. Or also for me, I find what really helps is to read, especially fiction books, like anything that takes me away from what's going on and kind of into a different world, while still not completely disconnecting myself from my body and what I'm feeling. And those things will obviously be individually different for everyone and based on what you like and who you are. Once we stop continuously distracting ourselves and we actually stay connected to our bodies, then we create the opportunity and the space to actually have whatever conversation our body is trying to have with us. And I think that doesn't always mean that we figure out the one thing that was wrong and then we fix it and then the anxiety is gone. For me, at least, that's not how it works. I like to think of it more as a conversation between me and my body that I commit to. And every time I have that conversation, I learn more. The questions that we need to ask ourselves and the answers we find from there will also obviously be different for everyone. But before we wrap things up, I wrote down a little list with 10 questions that I like to ask myself whenever I feel connected to my body again and whenever I feel I have space to ask those questions. And for me, some of those questions always help me figure out more what's going on, what I can change, what I need to change, and what I really need, and also what my body is trying to tell me. Number one, are my basic needs being met, like sleep, nutrition, and exercise? Number two, do I feel good and safe in the place where I am sleeping and living at the moment? Number three, am I setting realistic expectations for myself? Number four, have I been avoiding or numbing my feelings? Number five, am I surrounding myself with supportive and understanding people? Number six, am I stuck on past events or worrying excessively about the future? Number Number 7, am I managing my time effectively? Number 8, have I been setting boundaries with others to protect my mental and emotional well-being? Number 9, am I allowing myself to take breaks and rest when needed without feeling guilty? And number 10, have I been acknowledging and celebrating my small victories and accomplishments?